Sounds good now. We back. Let me know, chat, if it sounds good. Sorry about that. We never had this issue in the last stream. So
should we just restart the podcast? So
yeah, let's just restart all over again. All fixed. Let's go. Yay! All right. Sorry about that, chat. Sorry. It was a weird issue. I've never come across it before, but luckily the homie himself came in clutch with the solution. So hopefully no more issues from now on and smooth sailing. What was the issue? I had to running as administrator. Apparently my PC was not sending the necessary resources to the stream.
Yeah. If you're having any audio glitchy issues, that means you don't have enough processing power to deal with it, which means your program's not getting enough to deal with it. So run OBS in admin mode. It's weird, but it works.
Cool. Well, there you go, man. This guy's full of surprises. But sorry, where was I? Pickups and scrims. So what I like to do with individuals, especially who are like kind of new or want to get into this whole scrim and pickups to get better, is I tend to sort of like give them or set expectations. I usually tell them, look, it's a very, very different from 6v6, very, very different from survival competitive. A lot faster than trials. There's no sword peeking allowed for you, none of that stuff. And basically, I tell them there's a good chance you may not perform as well as you think on the first few games, and give yourself time to get comfortable with the whole speed in which scrims and pickups are played. And then I always tell them that you are going to get better. You are going to adjust to this sort of speed, and you're going to find your input to the team eventually once you get comfortable and you're able to play the way you want to play. But yes, it's like what you said, it's like a roller coaster. At first is speed and G-force coming at you. You don't know what the hell's going on. And then once it's done, you're like, oh, okay, well, I have to play at that speed. Okay, well, let me just take a couple of games to sort of catch up to that.
Well, this is the thing is I think I can relate it to what you do with physical training as well. It's like the first time you do it, it's a shock to the system.
Yeah, exactly.
Your body doesn't know how to move in a certain way, respond in a certain way. There are certain muscles that you didn't know you had, and now you're asking them to do things. And it's at some point, and it usually comes very, very quickly, your mind kind of shuts off and it's like, whoa, too much info, too much input. I need time to process this.
Yeah.
And it's important to have that, to do that first step and to get overwhelmed, because it then gives your mind, what you're doing to your mind is you're recalibrating your standard. You're recalibrating what is good, or what is your new baseline, basically. And this is the baseline from which you compare yourself to moving forward. I'm sure in physical fitness it's a little different, because your baseline is always changing. It's always moving up and up and up if you're doing it correctly. But in games, I find it really depends on who you are as a player. A lot of people who come into 3v3 in scrims and high level competitive modes, their baseline is pretty low. Like, it's not really even a baseline. It's just like the bare minimum of what they can do. It's like walking is their baseline. Well, everyone can walk.
Yeah.
Whereas, when scrims, you need to be able to communicate, you need to be able to aim properly, you need to have good positioning, movement, all of these things.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a level of competency to aspire to, in which that is the baseline. And then from there you build.
Yeah. We got this, it's what you said with like training, actually. Chat for, here's where I get a little bit sciencey for all of you guys. So check this out.
Oh no.
We have this term in training, or in physical training for muscle training, called super compensation. Maybe you might have heard of it, maybe not. So it's essentially that you have a baseline in which how your muscle or that particular muscle performs. It's right there. After training, that baseline goes down. It means fatigue, muscle tears, you've worked it out, you stressed it, it no longer can perform at that baseline anymore. But then once the process of recovery happens, you get something called super compensation, passes your baseline or your previous baseline, and now you have a new baseline where it's better at dealing with the external stressor that was being applied to that muscle. And I'm a strong believer myself that pick up scrims or getting better in any FPS game is exactly that. It's a bit of pain. You're gonna get exposed in a lot of ways what your weaknesses are, but then the process of recovery, the process of learning, is gonna give you that brand new baseline in time if you take the time to recover and learn and review things. Which leads me to my next question, actually. What goes through your mind? What is your when you're trying to dissect a player or like a gameplay, what are you looking for? Do you first look at the stuff that goes right or goes wrong, or yeah, like what's the whole process behind that? Because I've watched you do it, I'm kind of curious.
So I don't actually look for anything in particular straight away. I'm not looking for them to have good aim or have good positioning, because that's a pretty shallow starting point to then base a very fundamental observation on who they are as a player. And the way I review gameplays is I don't want to just tell them you did this right, you did this wrong. I want to psychoanalyze who they are as a player, and I want to try and get as many data points as I can so that I can figure out who this player is with respect to certain psychological profiles that I have in my mind based on experience and just all the data that I've seen from other gameplay reviews as to who they are, what their skill level is, how do they like to play, all of these things. I can usually tell what kind of player someone is and what their history in gaming is, or in Destiny 2 rather, just usually based off one game. And anything else that doesn't fit that mold is either an outlier or someone in transition between one stage of development to the other. And I always find those people to be the most interesting. I remember reviewing one person's gameplay, and he said, I picked up Destiny 2 months ago, and he hit a 55 kill gameplay. His name was Quiver, and he was coming from CSGO, and that's why he was so good. And that's like, that would be an anomaly. But yeah, in terms of like what I'd look for, so I usually make it a habit to watch half of the game, at least half the game, without saying anything. I just look at it, and I'll probably be interacting with chat if I'm doing it on the stream, but I don't say anything about the game unless I see like a wicked good shot, or a really bad play, or somebody else. It's just general reaction from watching a game, I suppose. And then also, as the game unfolds, I'll be looking at different points, different actions that happen in different points of time, and it will inform me of, is this person a good player, bad player, medium player, someone in transitioning? Is this someone, like there was one time we had somebody who was an imitator. He was like a pure imitator because he was doing all the things you'd see scrim players do, but there was no thought behind it. So like literally their aim would be like this. They'd be jumping up and down. They would, if they shoot 2 dire promises and then look away, pick up their shotgun and then try and kill them. They wouldn't really apply thought and logic to. They just replicate like a pure like machine learning, almost like trying to deep fake someone's playstyle onto their own. It was really fascinating. But yeah, the first step is watch the game, try and understand where they are on the skill spectrum, if that makes sense. Then based on that, give advice to help them reach the next level of that skill spectrum, because you cannot review people's gameplay, you cannot judge them according to the very best player or the very worst player or someone in between. Like there is a spectrum of skill. It's important to understand that. It's important to respect that and recognize it, and then start looking for things that are noticeably worse than other aspects of the game. So usually for a middling player, for a casual, someone who has no trouble in trials in a team, somebody who has no trouble competitively, someone who tops frags in quick play but cannot really hang in scrims, okay? Somebody who's trying to make that jump. What I would look for is I'd quickly identify the things that are good. So usually their aim is good, their use of cover is okay, they've got a good handle on their weapon ranges, their ability usage, the supers, all of that, the fundamentals aren't really in doubt. What usually makes them fall down is movement. Using cover, like I said, it'd be okay. It wouldn't be great. And then sometimes just situational awareness in unfamiliar situations, like like being in an area where the enemy's spawning next to you. They don't identify that quickly enough, and then they get themselves killed, basically. And like Godin's saying in the chat, laning next to cover is a huge thing. So I would identify the things that are good about their game. Then I'd see if the things about the game that aren't so good, if they are so noticeably bad that it's affecting the rest of the game, and then I would make a judgment as to whether or not to give advice for that or to focus on something else. And I just go through that mentally in my head. It's like, okay, this person moves really well, has good situational awareness, knows how to use cover, all of that, but cannot hit shots to save their life. Okay, why? Let's break it down. So then we break that down and we see, okay, this person has a good idea of head level. They're hitting the shots when they're hitting, I'd say 5 out of 10, 1 out of 2 shots are crits, and then the others are misses or bodies. Okay, so that's not good. So there's some mechanical issues there. But then you start asking even another question here is, okay, why are there mechanical issues? That's when you start observing other things about their play. Like their play style is the first thing I look at. It's like, okay, if this person has good movement, but they don't have good aim. Like usually the two are correlated because one comes before the other. Usually good aim comes first and then movement comes second. But this person has learned movement first and aim second. What does that mean? That means they've not trained their aim to be good enough for situations. They've only trained themselves how to get out of situations. So then the theory becomes, okay, it's not to do with their aim, it's to do with their playstyle. They've learned how to get away from situations so well that their movement is good. And instead what's happened is that they don't know how to get themselves into situations for them to then practice their aim so that their aim gets better. So you see, like, you're not just looking at what's wrong, you're looking at how they play the game and how they came to that conclusion. If I were then to look at their stats, I would probably say, okay, their end game stats might be a 3.5 or a 4.5 because they don't die, but then their lifetime KD would be a 1.2 or 1.3, and that says to me this person spent a very long time being bad at the game before they started being good.
Before they start getting better. The way you break down is actually quite interesting. Actually, the way you break down or dissect a player bit by bit is very similar to strength and conditioning coaches. You might have probably a few of those because I know Canada does produce some world-class sprinters, but it's very similar because that you do, obviously it's similar in the way it's dissected, but the way it's obviously done is very, very different because obviously as a strength and conditioning coach you go through a performance analysis, you go through the factors in which one makes a sprinter or any given sport great, so the attributes of power, speed, cadence and all that stuff, and then you look at basically those 3 things. Do they have enough strength? Great. But they don't have enough power. Why? They need to do more plyometric work. Okay, well that's what you have to do. Or vice versa, more cadence. Okay, well you basically dissect the individual to the point where you kind of narrow it down to what they need to do. And I do the same thing as well in Kovacs, for example. Kovacs, by the way, I'm not in any way, I'm not sponsored by Kovacs or anything. It's just the aim trainer that I like to use for mouse and keyboard, but it's helped me to the point where I can dissect myself like a strength and conditioning coach, to the point where, okay, my flicking is great, so I can switch from target to target and get the first shot done, but my tracking is terrible. I can't stay on target for very long. So there are drills for that as well. So any individual basically, regardless if you have a coach in front of you, like someone like Nomad or like myself or anyone, can dissect themselves very easily. You just got to take a step back and sort of look at the entire masterpiece, which is yourself, and dissect yourself in what you're doing right. And that's through game reviews, gameplay, reviewing your own gameplay, and just be a bit more analytical as to why you won a gunfight or why you lost a gunfight. Do more of what you're winning and then do less of what makes you lose. So like with someone like Storming, for example, I tried to make him see his own gameplay as well, and kind of like show him whether he's over aiming or under aiming in such a situation. And if he is, well, then this is a game that you can maybe try in Kovacs, for example, that will help you stay on target for a bit longer, etc., etc. So it's really cool that you do that, because not many, a lot of people, I'm not gonna name any streamers, but like I hear a lot of people ask that question to other streamers, other top tier streamers, and a lot of them just they just give a very generic answer: just play the game. It's not really that simple.
It's not helpful.
No, exactly. It's not really that simple. Just play the game. It's okay. I am playing the game, but I'm not getting any better.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a false equivalency in gaming, and I think a lot of it again comes down to the fact that people are young and they don't really have a lot of life experiences, that don't always learn from the top players because they don't really know how to communicate why they're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the people will look at me and they will look me up and they'll see my stats are like a 1.6 lifetime or something stupidly low compared to top level players. And they'll say, this guy doesn't have good stats. He's a fraud. He's nothing. He's like, okay, was your maths teacher a Nobel Prize winning mathematician? Like,
exactly.
Why is that the requirement? Good teachers are people who know how to explain concepts well and can communicate them in a way that are easily understood by the vast majority of people. If you are someone who is so narrow-minded that you can only learn from the best, good luck to you, best of luck. But for people who have life experience, who've gone through school, who have been around people who are smarter than them, they will know that it's about who can communicate better than the other person. And something that I learned in university and even in high school as well is that, you know, if you really want to understand something, try and teach it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I've been trying to do with this. It's like, I try and teach concepts that I myself am not solid on. But in the process of teaching them, in the process of making videos or doing gameplay reviews or doing streams, I have become a better player.
That's true. Like, some of the best boxing coaches in the world were not boxers, but they just loved the sport. But that doesn't, like, and vice versa. Some of the very, very best football players in the world are not going to be great coaches. Frank Lampard. Yeah. So,
okay, you needed more time. But you shouldn't have gone to Chelsea. I mean, but he knew. Anyway, that's a whole other. I could talk about that.
I'm joking. But yeah, but that's the point. Like, you know, just because someone's a top tier player doesn't mean they can coach it very well, and vice versa. Just because someone has average or slightly above average, but not to the top level, doesn't mean that suddenly you're gonna not listen to them, because they can be very good coaches. They may be able to see something that top tier players will not be able to see. It's essentially that. So to move on, so from the gameplay reviews, from you helping your community out to get better through mindset, through mechanical skill and everything, what are the most common, should we just say 3 or 5? What are the most common mistakes you see in regards to mindset during a tourney, during a scrim? Yeah. Let's delve deep into this one.
Okay, I could probably give you 10. Mindset. I think one of the biggest ones we talked about was being overwhelmed and not necessarily rising to the occasion's a bit much to ask for people. But letting the occasion get the best of them is probably one of the best things. One of the biggest things. It's like, you have to realize, yes, people are better than you, and you have to understand people are better than you, and understand that you need to be here if you want to improve, and try and frame this not as an exercise to do well, but as an exercise to become a better player. So going through the rationale, like, some people are just show up for scrims, some people are curious. But we host those kinds of events, and people put on scrims to fundamentally improve as players. And one thing I've seen that's gone a lot better in the last year with the scrim community, in general, not just my community, is that people are there for each other, and they will try and help each other get better. And there's there's a lot more good apples since the bad ones were removed from the community.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I think is, again, another like rise to the occasion, or like taking the occasion the wrong way, is they try and put too much on their plate. They try and top frag, they try and, you know, pull the team up by their bootstraps without realizing there's no boots on. They just try and overcompensate for either a perceived deficiency in their performance. They'll take a kill, or they'll get killed in a certain way. They'll take that to heart and then try their hardest, and that's not a healthy way to play. That's not a healthy way to improve. It's not good for your team. And it's also a hugely catalytic way to get burned out and to let anger and frustration seep in. Number 3, I'd say, is probably is anger, frustration. Bringing in your frustrations with the game into a friendly learning environment doesn't help you be friendly, and doesn't help you learn. That's a huge problem. Another mindset issue, mindset wise, probably not realizing that, like, probably taking bad performance and basically you'll get schooled in some way or the other, and then taking it super personally, like taking it as a reflection on your self-worth as a human being, and
to the point where it stops you from playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, it does manifest mostly in younger folks, like under 20 years old, I would say. Like, people will, if they're struggling with mental issues, and then they come into a scrim environment and they don't do as well for whatever reason, then you'll see in the community as they interact with people, their mental issues definitely got worse or got exacerbated by that. And I know that it's very simplistic for me to sit here and say, listen, it's just a game, don't let it affect you. And that's not very respectful to people with mental issues. At the same time, though, understand that these environments are put up from a place of love and for a place of understanding and for a sense of community. And if you win or lose, nobody's really going to care. They're just going to be really happy that you're there.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. It's great that you've actually fostered something like that as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's just something that I definitely noticed, that when I was trying to be more competitive, that's something I noticed a lot amongst participants. There's another mental side that definitely comes up a lot. I'm just trying to think. There's a few of them, but this will be the last one. Otherwise, I'll be sat here racking my brain forever.
Would you say, I mean, like, tilt in the moment can be one as well, or would that kind of like be categorized as like bringing that wrong energy into a friendly environment?
No, you're right. I think that was the one I was trying to think, because tilt manifests itself in so many different ways, and it's the base root of a lot of bad behavior, either to yourself and to others. I think, again, but that gets encompassed in the occasion of things. It's like you were saying, like wrong energy, but also just like coming to try too much and then becoming frustrated when what you're doing doesn't pan out.
Yeah. It doesn't quite work out. My man, you're literally, oh, what does your voice remind me of? Not exactly like his, but yeah, you can agree with me or not, but does Nomad remind me of Davey Attenborough from the National Geographic? Like, he's just so good to listen to. When he's talking, you just want to listen.
Oh Lord! I mean, he is getting on a bit. Maybe there'll be a job opening soon. Let me know.
You'd be the replacement, absolutely. I'll definitely give you a good reference.
About as old as him as well, says Hawk. I see you, Hawk. You cheeky fuck.
By the way, like, your competitiveness, did it just manifest only just from gaming, or did you play sport like at a earlier time? Or yeah.
No, I you know what? One thing that really made me as fiery as I am, or I can be, is that I don't know if it was clear from the way I look, but my origin is from Pakistan, and I grew up in Dubai, And one of the, like, I was part of the rugby team at one point, I was part of the football team, but the one I really want to be part of more than anything else was the cricket team. And the problem was I was really shit, but I knew I was like a better teammate. I had good like analytical skills. I knew I could help the team, but I was never selected. So I'd show up to practice every week, and like, because we only did it once a week, I would show up to practice every week. I'd make friends with people and show up to like their weekend practices that they do at like a sport club or whatever. And I would do my best to get better, but I hit my skill ceiling very, very quickly. And I think a lot of it had to do with my physicality, which hindered my ability to bowl and bat and field as well as I could have. And it's because I didn't really have the context of why I wasn't getting better. All I had was frustration and just more drive to prove myself. And when I left, when I finally left high school and there was no more cricket team to compete for, that's when I was just left with a huge well of fire and energy, and I was like, oh my god, I need to do something with this. So I took up karting, like go-karting.
Okay.
And I was very, very good at it. I was very fast, but I was a bit too heavy. Again, physicality. I was a fat kid, so I never really went anywhere with it. And then I took that fire and I manifested it into gaming, where thankfully your physicality doesn't matter as much, and I became a little bit better with that.
See, it's interesting you say that, because like when I spoke to Lunas last week, his drive, his competitive comes from basketball.
Yeah,
and it's this competitiveness, like it's all within us, but it's honed and it's nurtured when you take part in a competitive sport or in an activity where you can compete amongst other peers or other individuals. But if you never harness or use it, then it's there, but it's just you just don't take things too serious anymore. Like, yeah. But it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people who I know who are super competitive, I always ask them that question: do you play sport before? And they're like, oh yeah, boxing, cricket, rugby. And I'm like, okay, well that's come from somewhere, and it's been put to something else once you stop the activity or the sport that you are involved in.
And there was always like little bits and pieces of it. Like my mother taught me chess, and my father taught me the value of cheating at Scrabble, which made me really, really mad, because I wouldn't know how he was cheating. He would I figure out later, basically it's like he would bring the bag up to like the Scrabble bag, and then he'd hold it here so he could look into it, but he'd never make his head go down. So while we were focused on making where our heads were down, he was just like looking into the bag and like picking the letters he wanted. So that drove me to becoming better at Scrabble, and then like practicing it a bunch as well. Yeah, I think in order to stoke the competition, the competitive fires that lie in all of our hearts, it's a lot more commonplace in young men than young women, which I hope changes genuinely. You need environments at formative ages that involve other people, that also they're either there for enjoyment or they genuinely enjoy competition, but basically being exposed to it at a young age, in a healthy and safe way. If you're exposed to it in a very, very toxic way or in a very, very hostile environment, like I feel like in gaming it's very, very tricky, because people's first taste of competition, especially for a lot of kids coming of age in a pandemic, it's video games, and people aren't physically in front of you. They're not real in quotation marks. So people generally are their worst selves online. They're very quick to shout racial slurs, or to be misogynistic, or to be discriminatory, exclusionary. And people who are coming up in these environments, who are in their formative years, they'll have that understanding that this is what competition is, and then they'll look back on it and then rally against it as a negative experience, when they didn't have that in-person experience where it's not as easy to be hostile, but instead that energy is directed towards yourself to be better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like competitive scenes in general, or at least right now in the gaming, hopefully that, like you said, like you are one of the individuals that's trying to pioneer it to change that. But definitely Destiny for like a little while was in the wrong limelight, and like you said, we got rid of most of the negative, bad individuals that were holding it back, and hopefully now within time will foster a much more inclusive community in which it's okay to not to do like so well at first, but then hopefully it sets a fire in you to get better. And that's something that can be, which is why gaming might be, or esport gaming might be the future, because there's a new way to harness that competitiveness that you can also take out in IRL situations in your career and in your life as well. So it's I think it's really valuable, that mindset.
And also for impoverished third world communities, it's increasingly seen as a golden ticket to get out of those situations too. As more money filters in, it's important to then develop the mindset, the right mindset to be able to compete, and to not let the very real stresses of, say, not having running water or clean water or consistent electricity to then affect your own performance. It's like I just read stories of like kids in Pakistan, like the world champion in Tekken, I think last year or this year.
It's from Pakistan.
He was from Pakistan.
It's massive over there.
He was talking about how for 6 hours a day he didn't have electricity in his house, and to then rise above that and become a world champion, that's insane.
Yeah,
that's great.
I watched I can't remember his name. I think it was Aslang or Ascan or something. I can't remember his name. I'm gonna butcher the name, but it was literally that. I had no idea, because I like watching Tekken fights. I like watching the Dragon Ball Z fights as well. I like that competitive scene as well. But I had no idea that it was so big over there, because I think it's like huge. I think it's just why is it so big? I don't understand. Like if they have access to Tekken, then they have access to other games too. Why specifically that one?
Tekken, I think, is it's the original, go to someone's house, gather around a TV, and take turns, and electronics, like PlayStation and all that, consoles, we take them for granted here in the West, but they are very much still luxuries in that part of the world. So there's still more of that communal, like, fireplace thing going on. Like in the 90s and the early 2000s, we had that. Like, not everyone had a PlayStation, so you would go and make plans and ask your parents for permission to go around to someone's house just so you guys can play PlayStation for 4 hours. That's still very much a thing, and I think that's one of the reasons why Tekken has a lot of popularity in that country in particular.
Oh, you raise a good point there, actually. So another deep question before we probably move to like some Q&As, but I think I briefly mentioned tilt. Do you recall a moment where you've personally experienced tilt, and what did you do to get yourself out of tilt if you have a situation in Trials, in Destiny, or in any other game, or whichever you can pick?
So many. I'm just thinking, okay, competitive season 4.
That was pretty competitive.
That was the second competitive season in Destiny. They brought in season 3 and then season 4 came.
That was during the NF season, right?
Correct. That was the first season where Luna's Howl Not Forgotten came out. And everyone was obsessed with Not Forgotten, Luna's Howl, because they were just objectively the best weapons in the game. Those came out ranked 2100 and 5500, but the catch with competitive is that a win would get you 30 points and 150 at best for being on a streak. I left my clan because of Not Forgotten. I remember getting to 2100 with a solid group of guys who are still my friends, and they've all improved to the point where I'll happily run any piece of content with them, because at this point none of us have anything left to prove. But we were all part of the same clan, and I remember, I think at the time, I think they would admit it as well, is that I was just a level above them. in terms of skill, in terms of communication, in terms of strength and leadership. Now I think a lot of them are as good, if not better than me. But at the time, I was definitely like, there's always one, right? And I was that one. And I would get at around 2,800, 2,900. That's when things got really tricky for us. And it got very, very hard for us as a group. We were hitting our natural skill limits, skill ceilings. We found it harder and harder to keep going because we'd win 5 games one night and then lose 3 or 4, which would bring us back down and erase the gains from the other time. Competitive back then was brutal. It was a brutal grind, and I'm glad that it doesn't exist anymore because I don't wish it on anybody. But I just remember physically going into work one day and being a right see you next Tuesday to all of my coworkers because of what happened in a freaking video game. And that's when I drew the line and I said, that's not okay. When it starts affecting your real world, when you get so angry, and like I got so angry that we weren't winning, and I got so angry that they weren't doing the things that got us to the point that they did. I think in part it was skill ceiling, it was occasion, it was grind, it was pressure. And I think for a lot of people, everyone really wanted Not Forgotten, but didn't know how to work well as a team. And when we got exposed, it sucked. It just like things got worse and worse and worse. Yeah. And after a week of that, after a week of getting really my patience being tested, I flipped on them and I yelled at them. I didn't say bad things to them, thankfully. But I just said, I can't fucking do this anymore. I'm done. I need to find other people to play, and that hurt everybody. And I did apologize for that later on, and I really regret saying that. But it formed the basis of a very important life lesson, in that you can't do everything with the same group of people. You do have to be objective, be honest with your own potential, be honest with your own limits, be honest with the people you're with, and don't be afraid to experiment. Don't allow yourself to get locked in to just one thing with one set of people, because it's hard, but that you won't be able to do as much as you can with just one set of people. And you have to really ask yourself, is this something I really want? And if the answer is yes, then look at it objectively. Look at it like an urban planner or a strategic coordinator or even a coach. You're in charge of this team. Would you intentionally feel the team that is set up to fail or not, or more importantly, not set up to succeed? And if the answer is no, then you don't do it anymore. And you have to be rational. You have to make those decisions. So Tilt affected me to the point where I nearly lost friendships. It definitely made me lose my clan over that. I left my clan because of it. And then I found some people and we eventually got it. And then, over time, they didn't forgive me per se for the outbursts. They just said they understood, which is as close as I got. And then I did my best over the next year to try and make amends and get better at playing with them and not being ragey about it. So like figure out your limits, figure out what makes you tick, what makes you angry, figure out a way to manage it more than anything. If you're in a situation which is causing it repeatedly, try and get out of it. If not, then do something else to manage it so that you're not about to lose your shit, and also that it doesn't affect your day-to-day.
Yeah, I agree, because tilt is just, at least for myself as well, tilt is something, or bad thoughts, it's something that's always going to be there regardless what. It's how you manage it, it's how you tame it. And yes, there will be days where it's just, you get like a little outburst. I've had, I think probably quite recently in Face It, I had like an outburst, not on people, because I tend to avoid taking it on people, because I don't want I don't want to blame the team for that, but on myself, I take the sort of the whole loss or the whole everything on myself, and sometimes I can be a bit too harsh on myself, which manifests as like self doubt. Maybe I'm not cut for this. Maybe maybe this is just the ceiling. That's it. That's it for me. But I've learned over time, especially through scrims and pickups, and definitely getting ran over a few times, is that it's a process or a journey, which is kind of like the mindset that I usually tend to have when I talk to clients through personal training when it comes to like their nutrition and health and all that.
Sure.
That it's a lifestyle change. It's a big lifestyle change, and you are going to make a tremendous amount of mistakes along the way, but you're also going to make some good decisions too. But take that all as a process and a journey. Like opening up a business, when you first start up, it's tough as hell. You're probably not gonna make an income, but then through time, if you grind it out and stick to the plan, your business will flourish. It will make an income, and it will sort of like take care of itself. But in the beginning, you just got to see it as a process, as a journey.
And there's not enough of that kind of mindset in Destiny 2, at least. I think it's changing in wider esports in general, where you have teams that hire managers precisely for this reason. Like it's personal training. It's a shoulder to cry on. It's somebody who can take the stresses and the insecurities and the fears of the players who are having self-doubts, who are maybe not sure of themselves, who are having a bad moment, and they can take that on and coach them through it. And in the same way, like in business as well, it's like there are business mentors, there are business partners who are usually people with more experience, who've done it a long time, and they take care of the stresses so that the real brainchild behind the business, the person who's the most passionate, can work on being passionate. And I just hope that there is more awareness with respect to this. I know Destiny 2 is never really going to reach a point where you have a whole lot of awareness with respect to competitive coaching and competitive mindset and mentorship, because it's not a competitive game.
No.
It really is what people make of it. But that being said, I hope people like you can continue to have these discussions with people, continue to bring people on and get the word out about, the fact that, you don't have to be this, millisecond reaction genetic freak to be a good player. And you can prevail through a calm head and patience, basically. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. And just one more final thing. So we spoke about tilt. Can you recall a moment where you were not in tilt, but you uplifted a team to turn the game around? I suppose that might have happened as well, maybe during survival competitive as well, or maybe in trials as well, where you were 4-0 down and you managed to turn the entire game around through, I don't know, a talk, or telling them to be in this mindset, or whatever. What can you recall one?
Yeah, there was a game on Rusted Lands, I think in Season of Arrival. Yeah, it was early on in Trials of Life, and we were 4-0 down. It was just Murphy's Law. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and my team, I could feel it. Like they were having a bit of doubts as to like our strategy and whatever. And as a shot caller, that's on me. If our strategy is bad, I'll take that on the chin. But I genuinely didn't think our strategy was bad. The other team were having a pretty lucky game. Their stats didn't line up. There were suspicions of cheating, but then I looked at their movement and I thought, okay, they're good players. They're just in the moment. They're in the zone. And that's always a factor when you're playing against people in trials. Is sometimes you just come against a set of players who are in the zone. And I had a theory about sending our sniper to a specific location. And this sniper was missing shots. He didn't get all that involved. I think in 2 rounds he had 0 damage and he got killed. But I just had a feeling. I had a feeling where I thought, okay, these guys are in the zone. In the first two games, it was over really before we could think about what happened. And that's when I realized, okay, these guys are in the zone. So in the third game, I told them to perch up in rubble, looking from the C point towards the B point. I told him to perch up in rubble and just watch that lane. Okay. Now they would come through from seaside, they would come through tunnel, they would not be looking where he is. But the reason I told him to do that is because I said, listen, stay passive and just stay off radar, because if they are feeling confident, if they're in the zone, they're going to be feeling confident. They're going to want to roam a little bit. They're going to want to change things up. They're going to be a little bit loosey-goosey, a little bit complacent. They'll even split. And on round 4, that's what happened. On round 4, they split. 4-0 up, you get relaxed. It's just a natural thing. And I just knew, because I identified a player who liked to play the long game. He was a pulse rifle user, but his shot wasn't particularly good. So I said, let's set up, so we'll wait for that split to happen. Okay. And this was like 2-0 in the card, so it wasn't even a big deal if we lost. Like, we just reset and go again. So I just thought, okay, this pulse rifle user might get a little bit, I have a feeling he'll get a little bit loose and fast with his positioning. And if that's the case, I know he's going to come to B, and I know he's going to try and shoot that lane. So I want you to be there ready to take his head off. And sure enough, he did, and that broke the rhythm. They were so split apart. The two of us who were on another lane, we 2v1 someone, and then we 2v1 the other guy, and that shook them. That shook them because we did to them what they did to us. And then from there, the momentum was on our side. They we went to 4-3 without them having the opportunity to pop a super. And then at that point, it became a super battle. We had ours, they had theirs. We executed ours better, and then we won 5-4. And it's like in trials, things just flip like that sometimes. Yeah, it can. It's especially in the lower cards when you're facing off against, either like bad teams on a hot streak, teams sort of learning how to play together, or on occasion you'll come against Grenadier Jake. But basically, of those 4 out of 5 of those scenarios are very easily winnable. And it's about having faith that the team that you're up against isn't as good as your strategy.
Yeah, I mean, in trials especially as well, or even survival as well. Like, I've had a few occasions where, not necessarily 0-4 down, but on the receiving end of like a team where we're just completely dominating, it's 4-0, and they just suddenly out of nowhere change the strategy up, rally up, and then they just bring them back. And then my team, I've had to sometimes tell them, whoa, these guys are they want this W, so we gotta like change something up or something, or else it's game over for us. Because if they keep this momentum going, if they start getting this confident against us, then we don't respond back, it's over. We're not going to win this.
And what you just described is exactly why Trials needs to stay and be reworked and really looked after, because game modes that inspire that kind of like, whoa, they really want this, like that's what we live for, really.
Yeah. Those are the good moments. Yeah.
Those are the good moments.
Those are. All right, chat. So we're going to have a little Q&A. We're probably gonna, I don't know, like maybe for 5-10 minutes, and just see any questions regarding like what we spoke about, mindset wise, any questions that you have about yourself and your mindset, in which we can give our own input about. Obviously we I don't think no we can't really review gameplay here at the moment, but any questions at all, chat, regarding your own experiences with mindset, or whether we can give our own input in regards to what we would do in that situation, feel free to fire away, and also type in whether it's for myself, Donny, or Ascended, or just type in both, and then we can both answer. Just know I choke though. How do you work or overcome pressure situation like 1v3 on how to stay calm? I'm assuming that's for both. I can let you take care of that one, Nomad, and then I can answer after if you want. Sure.
1v3s are an interesting one because statistically it's kind of a write-off. Like, you just, like, most of the time you will die. So in a weird way, that's quite freeing to me. Like, being in a 1v3, there's no real pressure on you. The pressure's on the other team not to mess it up as much, right? Like, if it's a 1v3, they have to kill you. You don't have to kill them. the pressure's on them for them to kill you, not the other way around. People will just be sort of impressed if you manage to trade. So from that angle, it's a 1v3. I'm just like, I'm very zen. I'm just like, okay, whatever happens, happens. But in terms of how to handle it, 1v3 is just code for 3 1v1s. Make it hard for them to kill you, drag them out, stretch the team out, and try and pick them off as best you can. Now, in a 1v3, unfortunately, I do have to advocate for this. You gotta have a special weapon. You need a one-hit kill option that kills very, very quickly, that's reliable, and that you're good with. Whether it's a snipe, a fusion, a shotgun, whatever. Primary gameplay is probably not going to help you get kills, especially in a 1v3 situations where teammates can just easily dovetail with each other and absorb all the shots. And then they put shots on you. You've shot off 5, they just need 3, it's game over. Whereas if it's a 1v1 and you have a shotgun or a sniper, that's a lot easier to manage. Win that first 1v1, regain your health, then focus on the next 1v1. Win that, then you have the last one. And that by that point, if you've turned a 1v3 into a 1v1, you are more likely to win it than lose it. Because the other guys are rattled.
Yeah,
yeah, that's my take on it.
That is almost identical to the process that I go through as well, storming. Like, it's freeing to know that if I lose the round, it is a 1v3. But my thought process behind that also is my initial instinct is to try and stretch the entire team out. The worst case scenario for me is I run into all 3 and that's it. The chances of me winning that when all 3 are literally looking at me, I'm not going to win that. They have the firepower there. However, if I can run around the map, if I feel like I can actually win this and run around the map and split them up where one is trying to cut me off by himself, that's when I try and leap for the opportunity and try and get the 1v2. If it's trials, once that orb is down, I try and bait that because I know they're going to be calling me out and I know they're going to want to feel the res because or they're going to want to get the res because the 3v1 is a much better scenario than a 2v1. And if I get the second pick, then they're super worried about it. So they would rather get that res. So I would usually try and bait that res if I can. But usually with that, one has to split for the res while one has to keep an eye on me. And then I am usually going to get the guy that's going to go for the res. Or I'll go for the guy that's trying to flank me while the res is being picked on. And vice versa. And then I just try and work something out through there. A lot of it is a bit of a blur because I've done it not to brag or nothing, but I've done it a few times, but so a lot of it is just a blur and it's all instinct. But from what I recall, that is of the initial thought process, is just try and stretch the team out, let them spread out, and then pick them up one by one and try and bait orbs if it's trials. And yeah, and if I lose, well, no, it was a 1v3, so I was definitely not expected to win that. Second question, as someone with rampant ADD, how would you recommend developing good self-discipline?
That's very hard. That's really hard. I don't know. I can't speak to what your particular ADD experience is, Triassic, but it's the process of improving your discipline generally doesn't change. You figure out something that you're not like. What you do is you review your gameplay. You have a list of things that are perhaps not as good as you'd like them to be. Okay, whether it's like if you're talking about developing good self-discipline, I assume that means things like staying in cover, making sure you're not reloading too early, not popping super too quickly, that sort of thing. You got to start looking at seeing the things that you think could be fixed by good discipline. Write them all down, then focus on one at a time. And I know that's a stupid thing to say to somebody with ADD. Focus on one thing at a time. But like, you can only really work on one thing at a time for improvement. So you have to figure out what it is that does require improvement via becoming good at it. And then when you practice in Crucible, practice with the intent to just work on that one. Everything else can go to hell. All right, you could have the worst KD, your positioning could be bad, but if you're focused on hitting crit shots, then that is all you do. It doesn't matter if you hit a 0.5 or a 5.0. as long as you hit your crits more than you did the day before, that is progress.
Yeah, I feel like something that helps with me in regards to like discipline is having an objective behind it all as well. So like you said, like going for crit shots. So I tend to either with Kovacs or quick play or even survival, because survival there's nothing really to lose other than your rank points. So I tend to use this playlist too, and I objectively think, what am I working on these games? Am I working on aim? Am I working on my snipes, flicking? Am I working on positioning, using cover more? And I am conscious of what I'm doing, because that's what I'm working on. And then on top of that, which is why I save my VODs as well if you stream, or you can save it as well through Shadow Play if you've got the GeForce Experience software. I tend to record some of my gameplay in which I had a bad game or a good game, and then review why. I feel like that's probably the most that was the most valuable thing, one of the most valuable things for improvement is, okay, I had a bad game, but I can't just walk away just thinking I've had a bad game. I need to know why, what was going on that wasn't working out, and then through there I look at the many things that I've had, that many things or a few things that have gone wrong, and then just focus on one at a time. Okay, I could have played my cover better, so next game I'm just going to start working with cover until it becomes more or less instinct. And then once I get comfortable with that, I look at the next thing that I can work on, like the whole journey. The whole journey process. And the discipline just comes from having an objective, having a goal. That's how you stay on track. How do you two view meta and the whole skill gap between entry players, average players, and good players? This is for both of you.
How do I view meta between entry level? It's a bit vague question. Is it vague? Am I being silly?
Honey.
Or is this just a difficult question?
For meta, how do you two view meta and the whole skill gap between entry players, average players?
Oh, right. It's two separate things. Sorry, I was reading it wrong. Meta is important. Like meta, most effective tactics available. That's just a convenient acronym, but meta stands for metagame. It's important to understand and respect it, because you don't necessarily have to follow the meta, but you do have to understand that it's the meta for a reason. And whether that means you adopt the meta, you start using it yourself, or if you purposefully counterplay it, the fact is you cannot ignore it. You have to respect it and you have to learn it. And if you want to be competitive, you know what the best options are. And to be a good player, to have a good mindset in any game, you have to understand what the best options are for players to use. And in Destiny in particular, you have to understand what are the best combination of options to use. It's not like where it's Valorant, where it's literally just one or two guns. It's build diversity. Like I've talked to this with Drewski and Kami. It's like they believe that Destiny is fundamentally a deck building game. It's a card game. It's a combination of different things in your decks that help you have the upper hand. It's not one hand, it's five. It's understanding the meta is not just as simple as use the steady hand or use Fellwinter's Lie or use this weapon. It's about understanding what are the most effective playstyles, what are the most devastating builds, how easy is it to become super powered with Charged with Light and all these other things. The meta is very important. It's very, very important. Whether you use it or not is entirely up to you, but you should know it, you should respect it, and you should, live with it.
Agreed.
That's meta. Anything else you wanted to add there, Donny?
Meta-wise, yeah, like in regards to like the whole in like for example, when I use a Cloud Strike, for example, as a sniper, there are just some things that the Adored or the Beloved can do that I just cannot do. The handling is just not quite there. And yes, you can play off meta, but you need to accept the drawbacks of not playing a non-meta weapon. But it's always good to be aware of like what the top tier players are using. But in regards to like the skill gap and entry for players, like yes, they need to be aware of the meta, but towards the end, at the very, very, very top, a lot of it now is just decision making, movement, and mindset. I believe anyway. It's no longer too much about the meta, because everyone up there is using the meta now. Is essentially that mindset, positioning, game sense, and other little bits and pieces. But like, it becomes the differences now become so small. Whereas for an average player or an entry level player, knowing the meta is useful and will improve in some way or form. Will improve your likelihood of winning engagements by using meta weapons.
I would also say for lower and entry level and average players, I think the meta is an aspirational tool. It's something you work yourself up to, especially for the average players. Average players should start using the meta more so that they become better and start understanding, and like just as a positive feedback loop. If you use the best weapons, you will ostensibly get more kills with them, right? And that will make you feel good. That will make you want to play more. That will then want you to play the game more and then sink your time into becoming a better player. For entry players, though, if you use the best weapons and you're not good with them, you're going to start thinking that, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for Destiny, which it's a weird, like, flipped mindset. I always say for entry players, use the stuff that you feel most comfortable with, because to a degree, everything's fairly, balanced. Like the primaries, the most of the primaries kill within 0.15 of a second of each other if you hit all of your shots. If you don't, then nothing really matters, really. It's like entry players should use what they like until such point that they're comfortable mechanically to start using other stuff. And when they start using other stuff, they should experiment with, again, more of what they like, and they should also experiment with the meta. And then when they get to a point where they're average, either through game sense, through movement, through reading, analyzing, super usage, whatever, all the other elements that go into making your game good, that's when you start taking it to the next level, and you start experimenting with the very best options out there that people rave on about YouTube and Twitch for. At the very high level, I would say the meta is the defining focal point for all of your strategies. If you are a high level player that only plays the meta, you are a bad high level player. That's my personal belief. Because a high level player should be able to not only acknowledge the meta, use the meta, and use it really well, but they should also be able to counter the meta with something else.
Yeah.
And be able to have that surprise second, third, or even fourth loadout that nobody was expecting and have success with it.
No, I agree as well. Like, that's why you gotta it's good to be, like I said, it's always good to be aware of the meta, but it's also good to like try and sort of mold it in your own playstyle. Okay, maybe you can still play meta, but like, for example, I'm a Titan main, and everyone at the top is always Felwinter's Thorn, or Felwinter's Dire Promise, Felwinter's, the same thing with Doom Marches over and over and over and over again. But like, there are other exotics as well that can sort of might have really good synergy with other loadouts as well. No one really expects a Titan to snipe, for example, but you now have a Gauntlets now that you can shoot through, giving you the definitive advantage when you're trying to snipe, as an example, because you have a shield that you can shoot through, but they can't shoot you back. Little things like that where you can sort of experiment in quick play and all that, and see what other exotics and weapons and loadouts have some good synergy to each other, and that's a good counter. What can a meta individual at the top level do? If you can hit your shot, obviously, do against a shield that you can shoot through with a Titan sniper, they can't really do much, and that's already countering someone who's, I don't know, controller sniper who doesn't miss, but not only are you not gonna not only am I not gonna receive damage, but I am able to hit my shot and hit you instead. So always good to like dip your toes into other weapons and loadouts and exotics to find that synergy. Drewskis is especially really Drewskis and Kamikazes they are especially very good at finding these synergy weird loadouts, but then put out some gameplay and they are absolutely dominating the lobby. So we'll definitely watch their stuff as well.
Yeah, but what you don't see for both of those players is that they do take some adjustment to doing it. It's kind of like Instagram, right?
Yeah.
People put up the best versions of themselves. Like I know, like Cammy is generally a freak of nature. I don't think he'll mind me saying that. He's just a very naturally gifted player. Juski as well. For a lot of people, they'll see an off meta loadout, then they'll use it, and then they'll be bad with it, and then they'll say, oh well, these guys are just great players, so therefore they can make anything work. That's not true.
No.
If you're not having success with an off meta loadout, that is an indicator. Okay, something might be wrong here, but if they've recommended a build or a play style that's synergistic and works in a very specific way, and you can't replicate that, all that means is that you're not particularly good at taking advantage of the deck of cards that build is, right? And that might speak to your inflexibility as a player. It might speak to your maybe it's just past your natural skill ceiling, and all of that's fine. But this is the thing: is like if you push yourself to experiment with bad options or statistically worse options, and interesting combinations of those worse options, I think it actually does make you a better player. If anything, it just makes you more informed, which is useful in high level stuff.
Yeah, of course. Like especially like in a trial scenario, for example, like having several ways to play the game, having several play styles can be very, very overwhelming or obnoxious to play against. Like someone that's able to use a grenade launcher, able to use a fusion, able to use a sniper, able to use linear fusion rifles, all pulses, everything. Like they can play long, they can play short, they can play aggressive, they can play passive. Like if you're that diverse, you are a very, very, in my eyes anyway, I'm pretty sure Nomad would agree as well, you are a very tough cookie to play against, because then you just don't know what to expect during the rounds.
Yep. 100%. It's not fun going up against someone who you think is using their time to explain, and then the next round, it turns out they're using Lumina and a shotgun, and they're actually kicking your ass with it. And then they're giving their teammates damage buffs, and suddenly the whole dynamic of everything changes.
Yeah, so true, man. Any more questions? By the way, thank you everyone for the follows. By the way, you guys, everyone here is amazing. Thank you. I think that's all the questions now, Nomad. Any more? Oh yeah, go on, Hollow, go for it. Go for it, fire away. We'll give you one more.
This is going to be the most serious question ever.
By the way, Triassic and Storming and Hollow as well, I hope we answered your question in a way that makes sense. How do you two try and enter a trance of sorts? Oh, like flow? Like flow, is that? I'm assuming that's what the question is, like the state of flow. All right, you want to go first or should I?
No, you do this first.
So I'm gonna speak from a sporting perspective, because I used to compete in a lot of freaking sports before I even dipped my toes into competitive gaming. So one thing I've noticed throughout, even myself as I grew as an athlete, for example, that you begin to have like these rituals. You begin to develop these rituals before you race, before you play a match, before you do the competition. Like for example, Rafa Nadal in tennis, for example, before every single round, he has to have those bottles that he has, those drinking bottles that he have in a specific line, in a specific position. If not, then it just, I don't know, maybe it just puts him off or something. He always readjusts his pants right before he's about to go for a serve. Little things like that you just sort of, it's like combos in a freaking fighting game. It's just a combo that just triggers that move, that mood, that zone that gets you into that. And it can be anything. To me personally, it's definitely a ritual, and it's definitely music. A certain playlist and a certain song will get me into that zone. and actually, believe it or not, in sports psychology, they're looking into that a lot more, into like music, and how that can have an influence in your state of flow during a game, during competition. Again, there's so many variables with it, but it's actually very interesting. But yeah, music for me, and a certain ritual that I have, gets me into the zone for competition. Like when it comes to gaming, for example, I need music and I need me some Kovacs. I need to warm up my shot. I need to play specifically 2 to 3 games that I know have helped me, and that builds up my confidence because I've warmed up my shot and now I'm ready to kick some ass, basically. That's me. But every single individual has their own ritual, their own way. It can be literally anything, to be honest.
For me, it is, funnily enough, working out. My biggest issue is that I am an overthinker. I have too much going up in my brain. There's too many voices, too many thoughts, too much analyzing of different things. And it gets worse when I'm playing a game, especially in an information-dense game like Destiny. This game throws information at you, and I can see it all, and I can see the trends, and I'm always thinking about, what if this happens? What if that happens? This, that, and the other. And it distracts from the now. It distracts from the moment to moment, the play to play. And on top of that, if I don't feel good physically that day, I will not play well. It's as simple as that. And a lot of it's influenced by diet, obviously. But at the same time, I live in Canada in the winter. We had 7 days of sunlight in December. And for the entirety of December, I played like shit. I was dog shit at the game. And I didn't realize it at the time, but then in January, we had more sunlight, and it was a lot better for me physically. And I performed better as a result. So for me, flow, I have a couple of requirements. First of all, I need to be playing for a few days. I need to be warmed up mechanically. My muscle memory needs to be good. I need to have no distractions in real life. So if my desk is dirty, it will affect me. If my floors are dirty, it will affect me. If the kitchen's not clean, if the dishes aren't done, it will affect me. If there's an outstanding task, if I have to pay a bill or something like that, it will affect me. So I have to take care of all that. And on top of that, something that really helps, just that one added layer of quietening my brain, is working out. Nothing gives me that as clear a head as the moment after you finished, not even a very intense workout, but just moving your body, doing a lot of body weight exercises lately because of being stuck in lockdown and our gyms aren't open. But just having that physical exertion so that whatever energy was in my body, in my head, is now gone. I know it's not very scientific, but for me, that's what helps. And it quietens my brain. It makes me see things faster in a way because there's less noise in my brain, and I perform much better. I don't know if it's flow or if it's just me playing at my level, but either way, there's a lot that goes into my flow nowadays, and it gets worse as you get older, or for me at least. So I don't unfortunately get to do it as often, but when it does happen, it's really something, and it's a very cool state to be in.
One thing I'll say, Harlow, as well, is a good way to notice flow, or like that state that everyone seeks, like in the right moment. Sometimes they can come from a competition, or it can come from just simply working, or from something that you're actually enjoying. Flow state, you notice flow state, or you'd been in a flow state before, when the whole session was like a blur. Time just flew.
Yeah.
A good analogy that my coach always told me as well is in sprinting, for example, because that was the most recent one, and I got the most coaching, the most guidance in that sport, was when you try to run fast, you won't run fast. When you force to run, when you actually run fast, you literally feel like a feather. You're just flowing. You're not actively being aggressive, attacking the floor. You literally feel like you're flowing across. You literally start from 0 to 100 meters, and it literally just felt like a blur. You're just going with the wind. It's suddenly over. That is exactly what flow state is, or at least from my experience, what it is. And sometimes I experience it as well when I'm editing something or working on something. I literally start something or start working on something that I particularly enjoy, and before I know it, the whole hour, 2-3 hours is gone, and I'm like, wow, I had no idea. And you literally forget about everything. You lose all consciousness about what's going on around you. You forget you're hungry because you're so zoned in, and then you just snap out of it once your work is done. You're like, oh wow, it's been 3 hours, what the hell, dude? That's flow state there. That's the best way that I can sort of describe it for you, Hollow. That's the feeling that, in case you're unfamiliar with it, that's kind of how it feels.
Good feeling.
It's a great feeling, isn't it? You feel super productive while you're in it, and you don't realize how much work you've done in such a little amount of time. You're like, wow, this is great. If only we could always experience that all the time. I've only experienced flow state in D2 for literally the 2 Crucible matches I played over 2 days. I have never been able to replicate it. Try and remember, Hollow, what you did prior to the games, whether you did anything different. Did you go for a drink? Did you just step outside? Did you whatever? If you can recall it, then you can try and mimic that again, and then you can make that into routine. So I'm not gonna guarantee that you're always gonna be on flow state if you repeat those exact same things, but it will definitely increase your chances to being in a flow state. The only drawback with flow state is that there's so many variables. You may do the entire routine thing, but like what Nomad said, if you haven't paid a bill or something else is concerning you, it's gonna immediately put you off that flow state. So you got to be in very good conditions.
There's a very helpful way of thinking about this that I learned from James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, which I recommend to everybody. It does veer into kind of self-helpy, but there's a lot of good life lessons in there that I think everyone can appreciate. Goals are the byproducts of having good systems. Goals are never achieved by doing X to get Y. That's just doing X to get Y is just a means to an end so that you can do Y to get Z. And when you think linearly like that, you find that you don't actually go anywhere. You don't actually get to the place you're trying to go. You don't actually achieve the thing you're trying to achieve because you're just too focused on doing one thing. You're just too focused on input and output, not thinking about the big picture. So for me, what I think about flow state is, if I'm not in flow state, there's something gone wrong with the systems in my life, or something's not right, or the cogs are misaligned, or something, like I said, bill hasn't been paid, or something like that, that prevents you from being able to achieve this flow state. And I have to look at the system. For me, I think a lot of it is to do with my upbringing. That's why I'm an overthinker. But then there's little things that I don't perhaps do enough of to control the environment around myself, in which causes me to have these little micro stutters in my system, which then allows me to have flow state. So it's about understand what is your system? What is your system for achieving this flow state? Then optimize that system as best you can. If the goal should be to optimize the system. Now, it could be for you as simple as, I don't know, having a glass of lemonade. I really don't know. But for other people, it's a lot more complicated. Like, Donny, you have your own system of things you do. Rafael Nadal has their own system to do. And it's about optimizing that system and making sure that system works perfectly, and then flow will just happen. It's a byproduct. It's like, the goal should not be to get verified on Twitter. The goal should be to make interesting content on Twitter so that your followers grow, and then naturally you get verified. You know, it's a symptom. It's a byproduct. It's not the product.
Yeah, definitely. You're definitely not gonna. You don't know you were in flow state until after. That's one thing I do feel as well. You only feel it until after. Like, you just realize when, like I said before, time flies. You do something really well. You create your own masterpiece, and you're like, wow, okay, that just happened. You don't know it. Yeah. You're just in it. So it's not like okay, I'm in flow now, let's go. No, it's just you gotta like warm it up. You gotta play your game. You gotta just work with it, and then eventually it just pops in. Before you know it, you're already in it.
100%.
And hopefully that answers your question, Hollow. I try my best to like sort of draw in as much as I can from like my sporting background, in which I apply a lot now to FPS games and all that. But and I hope Nomads one was helped you out a bit, and hopefully you'll come back to the stream one day and you're gonna tell us that you were in flow state again, or a Nomad stream. I want to hear that you managed to sort of find a little mini routine that gets you in that mood for flow, and then before you know it, you're in flow. Hopefully that helped you out. But yeah, Nomad, it was freaking amazing, man, to actually have you here. You were like one of my number one individuals to have in regards to like the first phase of inspired trading, and into the podcast, man. Like, I feel like this has been very, very, well, at least for me, for myself, this has been very, very insightful in the way in how you think and your thought process. And I'm definitely going to be hopefully none of it's copyright or anything, but like I'm gonna definitely be nitpicking some of your strategies for myself and other people. And yeah, it was very, very valuable, man. I loved having you on this.
Well, thank you very much for having me and tolerating my bullshit. I appreciate it. It's not often outside of my own bubble I get to talk about mindset in a productive and interesting way. I've always, like, recently it feels like I'm the only person trying to advocate for healthy discussion rather than negativity. So I thank you for having me on, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where you take Inspire Training. Hopefully I'll be on again soon.
No, absolutely, man. This I mean, if it's all right with you, man, it definitely won't be the last time, man. It was
yes, sir.
It was very educational for myself, and I hope everyone else in chat found it very insightful. And go out there and slay, man, whether it's gaming or in IRL or both, man. Go out, do your thing, man. It's all mindset at the very, very top of the mountain, man.